Cancer 6, game birds feathering their nests. The game bird is food. We hunt it in order to eat it. And yet the feathers that the game bird is using came from another bird which died in order for the feathers to be released for another purpose. And we see here the ruthlessness of nature. This is something we have to accept. Nature is ruthless. And we are of nature. A part of us, anyway, the animal part of us, the physical body, comes from the natural world. And it has its own instincts for survival. And that requires us to eat. When we eat something, it dies. And eventually we get eaten. Eventually. That's how it is. Eat and be eaten. It's the normal dynamic cycle of life. And any attempt we might be making to pretty it up and soften it and say, well, look, we're all very polite to each other, we're very civilized, and we don't do that. Well, we do. We do that. And we don't really know what it would be like if push came to shove. If the thin line of civilization collapses. How close are we to being ruthless animals? We don't know until we're tested. And the times ahead may well test us more than we've been tested before. What are we like with our survival instinct? What are we like with our sense of the ruthlessness of nature? So in Cancer 6, we're being asked to consider this aspect of our being, this animal nature. It's also mentioning the fact that we have to practice this instinctual behavior within the context of our community and find some kind of balance. We just wouldn't get away with behaving ruthlessly all the time. It's only when push comes to shove, it's only when actually our lives are in danger that it is permissible to behave as though our lives were in danger. So those people that behave ruthlessly and in an animal-like way without that imperative are forbidden by civilization and they're imprisoned and so on. So we're putting this in the context of the urge to survive having to be reconciled within civilization's requirements for us not to be dangerous to the others. It's a very delicate balance that needs to be drawn. And if we go not far enough in one direction and people are behaving like animals, something wrong is in the air. We don't feel safe. We don't feel able to experience love and joy and these more angelic qualities. Whereas if we over-civilize a situation and there is no expression whatever of our animal nature, then there's a dryness, a greyness, a living death that's just not acceptable to those of us who have a sense of vitality. We have to find the appropriate balance between these two imperatives. And this doesn't get set. This changes all of the time. And we have to recalibrate day by day by day, moment by moment, whether or not we should be more instinctual and claim what we want. Like an animal, power is the determinant of success, or defer to the fact that we want to enjoy the benefits of community and give some of our surplus resources to help somebody else. Basically, the tax system should be based on that. It isn't. It's based on the fact that the people who want to buy military equipment and poisonous pharmaceuticals want lots of money from us. But the tax system is meant to take some money from those who've got too much and give it to the poor, and so that the poor can be kept alive and kept in good health and so on. So to some extent, the tax system is an enactment of our philosophical attitude. And if there were no tax, then we would be offering money to beggars ourselves, and we would be taking care of the poor and the needy ourselves in a community or in a village setting. That's what would happen, and it does happen. It's certainly observable in native communities. So we're talking about the question of balancing between altruism or care or community responsibility, whatever you want to see that as, and ruthlessness or our animal instinct or our survival needs. And these two forces are both very strong within us, and the balance to be found is not set, it's dynamic. We have to come at life with this concept constantly in mind. How do we balance this? And the answer is meticulously. It changes all of the time. The appropriate behavior in any situation is not the same as it was yesterday or will be tomorrow. It's not the same with this person as with that person. And it's not the same at different ages in life either. We become a little bit more demanding when we are needy, and we get needy when we get older. We're a bit more obedient because we're taken care of as young children by parents, and so we don't have to care too much about our survival needs at that point. So there's an evolution throughout our lives of our concept of what we must do to survive. And whether or not, when push comes to shove, that would include being ruthless. Are we potentially ruthless? In other words, when it's a choice between my life and yours, would I lay down my life for you, or would I take yours, if that was the choice? And the answer is, we don't know. Not until we're tested, and very few of us are tested. And yet that urge within us, that instinctual urge to eat or be eaten, to kill or be killed, that passionate survival requirement of the animal nature, is dormant. It's not dead. It's within us. And it can be triggered. And it can be triggered in domestic situations. There's quite a lot of domestic violence in the world against spouse or against child, and it's terrible. And we really don't know what we would be like until we're forced into a situation of that type. So it's good for us to be honest about our urges. One client came to me one day in a state of great distress, and he said, I need to stay with you for a day or two until my anger towards my wife has receded. He was so caught up in the emotions of his relationship that he knew he would hit her if he didn't get away, and he had to come away. He was showing a great deal of personal responsibility by doing so, and realized that for him to admit his violent nature to me would be completely cool for me. I had no problem with that. That's how men are quite often. And yet they don't admit it, and they don't seek help when they need to seek help, when it's too strong. And of course there's an equivalent on the women's side too. And there's an equivalent for all of us. We're all occasionally pushed too far. And we need to be careful that we've got a plan B in place. Who do you go to when you've got nowhere to go? Where you can't contain your emotions. What do you do with that then? And this is not a rhetorical question, really. It's like, what's the answer? What will you do if, in the times that are coming, a survival instinct within you pushes you towards a behavior after which you would not be pleased with yourself? Try and anticipate that. This is the message here. The game birds feathering their nest indicate the idea that each of us is selfish. When push comes to shove, each of us is selfish. And that means at the expense of someone else. This is a danger that any spiritual seeker has to face. A story a Buddhist friend of mine said, lovely, he was talking of a Buddhist in Tibet, talking to his spiritual master, and the master said, how are you coping with all of this invasion by a foreign country? And the student said, I was beaten badly, and all of my property was taken away, and so on, and I felt myself to be in great danger. And the teacher said, well, it seems like the danger actually occurred. You know, you suffered the damage. He said, oh, no, that's not what I meant. I meant I was in danger of becoming angry, and becoming violent towards the oppressor. Interesting story. You know, the danger that we have is, if we're truly highly advanced spiritual beings, is not a survival instinct problem. It's the danger of losing ourselves in the passion of violence against another person. This is to be avoided at all costs. Not for their benefit only, but for our own benefit. We must not violate another person if we are to stay true to our spirituality.